Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order. My name is Jim McIntyre. I'm the counselor for Township 7, Ward 5. I'll be chairing the meeting today. We have one public meeting regarding proposal. Development applications in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meeting was sent by first-class mail to property owners within 120 meters or 400 feet of the subject property. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the applications. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act process for statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment application. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of the public meeting will be as follows. Firstly, the applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the applications. Secondly, the township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant and or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And lastly, members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions and for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, the applicant, their agent, and if required, township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. No decision will be made today at the public meeting on the proposed subdivision and associated zoning bylaw amendment applications. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including questions and comments submitted by the members of the public and the committee, will assist the township, and applicants team to determine next steps. Once the township and the county are satisfied with the information provided by the applicant and their consultants, a recommendation report will return to this committee for consideration. Unless directed otherwise, the committee, no further public notice is required by the Planning Act for these applications. The township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, for which this committee may recommend the bylaws to be considered by council or ask for additional information prior to the consideration. In the future, the county of Simcoe, who is the current approval authority for draft plan of subdivision and or township council, decide in favor of the application by adopting recommendations for this committee. Members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decision may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT, under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meeting in person or by Zoom or YouTube or telephone may email or call the township's planning department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the applications. Public meeting for 2970 Fesserton Road, draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment applications. Applicant's presentation. I now call upon the applicant's agent, Brandi Clement from Jones Consulting Group, to please present the information provided within item C1.3.1 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and effect of the applications.
Thank you for the introduction and good morning. I'm just going to share my screen so I can share my presentation with you. Okay, so I'm hopeful that everybody can see this.
Brandi, you're a bit muffled there. Is there any way to clarify your microphone?
I could speak louder if that helps.
It didn't hurt.
Okay. So sorry about that. Good morning. My name is Brandi Clement, and I am with the Jones Consulting Group. I'm here this morning on behalf of our client who have submitted applications to the municipality for a zoning bylaw amendment and a plan of subdivision for the lands that are located at 2970 Fesserton Side Road. So the lands are a block on an existing M plan, and that plan of subdivision being the Georgian Heights subdivision adjacent to the west. The intent was that these lands would be developed in the future, and as such, they were also designated and zoned accordingly at the time of the Georgian Heights subdivision approval. The lot area is approximately 10.23 hectares in total. There is 20 meters of frontage along Fesserton Side Road. The lands do have some cleared activity toward the middle of the site, and surrounding land uses are primarily residential uses. So the proposed development is for 14 single detached dwellings. The lot frontages range from 44 meters to 74 meters. The lot areas range from 2,900 square meters to 9,000 square meters. Access is from Fesserton Side Road. Access to all of the lots internally is from a newly constructed roadway. This will be a public roadway, so it will be developed to municipal standards. The overall proposed net density is approximately 1.8 units per net hectare. There are 2 stormwater management ponds proposed, one being in the middle of the site, the other being on the east side of the site. There's an environmental protection corridor that runs north-south through the middle of the site, and this respects the existing drainage easement that is on the property today, as well as buffers on either side of this drainage corridor. So it's a total width of 30 meters. There's a park block that we're proposing in the middle of the site, and this gains access through a walkway which is on the west side of the middle stormwater management block. We see this as a passive park, so there'll be minimal disturbance, minimal clearing of trees in the park block. There's a 15-meter tree buffer that has been proposed around the perimeter of the majority of the lots, and the lots will be serviced with individual well and septics. So there are 2 applications that have been submitted to the municipality. The zoning bylaw amendment application will rezone the lands to estate residential exception. This will recognize the lots with site-specific development standards. The open space zone will recognize both the park block and the 2 stormwater management ponds. The environmental protection zone will recognize the drainage corridor that runs through the middle of this site, which includes the buffers. And the environmental protection exception zone will recognize the 15-meter tree buffer and some associated grading within that. The plan of subdivision application creates the 14 lots for the single detached dwellings. It also creates the blocks for the park, for the 2 stormwater management ponds, and then it further identifies the drainage corridor on the property. With respect to the provincial policy statement and the A Place to Grow growth plan, in my professional planning opinion, the applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement, and they do conform with the A Place to Grow growth plan for the reasons that are identified in this slide. There's a number of bullets that I've put on this slide, so I'm not going to go into them in great detail, but I will note that the policies that are related to the documents are identified in brackets behind each bullet. And this simply shows that there's support provided within both documents for the proposed development. Lands are designated settlements in the county's official plan. Settlements is where the majority of growth is to be directed. The use that we are proposing is permitted within the county's official plan. The lands are designated in the in effect plan at the time of the submission of the applications as country residential. This use is permitted on the property. An official plan amendment is not required for the proposed use. Currently, the lands are zoned as estate residential as well as environmental protection in the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw. The estate residential being the same zoning as the adjacent Georgian Heights subdivision. This slide illustrates the proposed zoning bylaw amendment schedule. So just to go into that, into a little bit more detail for that, the estate residential exception zone, which you can see on the slide as the ER-XX zone, will zone the residential lots, as well as it identifies the site-specific development standards for the lots, which I will go into a bit further detail in the next slide. The open space zone recognizes the 2 stormwater pond blocks as well as the park block. Again, the environmental protection through the middle recognizes the drainage corridor and the buffers. And then around the perimeter of all of the lots except lot 1, there is the environmental protection exception zone, or the EP-XX, and that identifies the 15-meter wide tree buffer, and then that there is permissions to have some grading within that tree buffer if necessary. So this slide illustrates the proposed zoning exceptions within the estate residential zone. The required column shows what the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw requires in this zone. The proposed column identifies what we are proposing with our applications. And then the variance zone, or variance column, excuse me, on the far right identifies the variances that we are requesting to the development standards. So it's important to note that you zone to your smallest lot within the property, and that is generally lot 1 on the property. And so there are some lots that don't require all of these variances. There's some lots that may not require many at all. So the variances would not be as great. With regard to proposed servicing, individual wells and individual septic systems will be provided on all of the lots. The grading will conform to municipal standards for both the lots as well as the street. Erosion control measures will be provided that will meet the requirements of the township and the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks throughout all stages of construction on the property. And stormwater quantity and control and quality control will be achieved through the 2 stormwater ponds as well as soakaway pits. This slide illustrates the reports and studies that were submitted in support of the applications. I just wanted to note that we have made 4 submissions to the municipality in total prior to the public meeting. So we have been working with the municipality as well as various agencies to work out a lot of the comments and the concerns that have been received since the first submission. And in conclusion, it's my professional planning opinion that the proposed applications conform to applicable policies within the A Place to Grow growth plan, as well as are consistent with applicable policies within the provincial policy statement. The applications conform to the County of Simcoe's official plan, as well as the township's official plan. The development will be compatible with surrounding land uses, and it utilizes the lands efficiently and at an appropriate scale. The applications allow for the intensification of a site that's currently an undeveloped block on a previously developed plan of subdivision within a settlement area. The development represents a logical infill of residential development, and with proper mitigation measures, there'll be no negative impacts to any natural heritage features on the property. So thank you. That concludes my presentation. And with me today is a representative of our client, as well as a number of the consultants to answer any questions that the committee, staff, or the public may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clement. Does the Township Senior Planner, Katie Mandeville, have anything further to add to the materials and the information presented by the applicant?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note we are still, as township staff and our peer reviewers, reviewing these applications. So members of the public and members of committee may have noted within the staff report there were some commentary to the effect, as well as within the chart that Ms. Clement's team submitted. Township staff had added some commentary within that comment chart. So further comments, I guess. So we are still reviewing the hydrogeological studies and peer reviews. So that's both for water quality and water quantity. And when I say water quality and quantity, I mean drinking water, well water quantity and quality. So we are still reviewing that. We are also reviewing some of the engineering details still, such as lot grading, stormwater management, all of that kind of stuff. So with that comment, I think actually Mr. Burke might have some comments he'd like to make just in terms of our review of some of that stormwater management and detailed design, engineering, all that kind of good stuff. So with your permission, Chair, I'm going to pass it over to Derek Burke.
And thank you through the chair. Yeah, so I'm with the Public Works Department, and we wanted to discuss and share some of the concerns we heard from a previous meeting and was relayed over the years regarding this file that's on Fesserton Side Road, regarding the existing drainage concerns that are on Fesserton Side Road. And so I wanted to share a map, and what we might do here is just discuss what are the challenges with the existing stormwater management system on Fesserton Side Road. What are the opportunities for the township to address some of those and what that might look like? But more importantly, how does this relate to the development file application that we have in front of us today? So with that, I'll just open this, share screen. My tech skills are not the best, but I think I'm close. Okay. So what we have on the screen here is just a highlight of Fesserton Side Road and the information that we have at the township from its existing drainage pattern. And I'll kind of zoom in from the bottom of the outlet location of Fesserton Side Road and County Road 16, where you see that a lot of the water comes down the hill and crosses County Road 16 and enters into Match Bay via these channelized culverts and roadside ditches. Where we've heard a lot of the challenges exist a little further upstream, where the grade of the road significantly increases and we get fast running water on a fairly frequent basis directly relating to large scale rainfall events. The subdivision of the discussion today is actually located about here. This would be the entrance to the subdivision. And you'll see that there's an offline pond that we've seen a video, I think, in the past, and some concerns with overland flow that is almost a near direct result of some of this infrastructure being overwhelmed by those larger, more intense rainfall events. This is existing conditions. These are existing infrastructures the municipality and private property owners own and operate, and is dissociated from the Planning Act application we see today, as we are working with the developer and the various consultants that are doing submissions prior to even today. The general flow of the land moves north, and it moves away from this location, and it doesn't negatively, or I guess, contribute to this particular drainage infrastructure. So moving up, that's what we have in terms of existing conditions. And where we see is there certainly are some known concerns in the area. We want to report back to council on some options for improvement through renewal capital works programs and projects in the future. But this particular concern, is not necessarily tied to the Planning Act application that we have here today. So I hope that sheds a little light on what we have as a challenge in front of us on Fesserton Side Road. potential future capital works projects to address some of the capacity constraints that we've seen over the years, and seems to increase with, what we understand is climate change, increased rainfall events, increased intensity of those rainfall events and frequency. And that's through a renewal capital works program, not necessarily a development application.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. We'll move along to public questions and comments. Any person present in person or Zoom or the telephone who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak. Township staff will call upon each registered participant. For those in remote attendance, unmute yourself when called upon and turn on your camera if you wish. All will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that your comments will be also recorded and live streamed on Township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or remove any personal information provided in the course of submitting comments or questions. We'll now call Brad. Are there any members of the public registered to speak?
Thank you, Chair. There were no members of the public who pre-registered to speak at today's meeting. However, you may wish to open the floor to those in attendance. I don't know if there's anyone on Zoom, members of the public who have joined as well, but perhaps opening the floor for comment. Thank you.
Okay. Does anyone in person have any request to speak? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You may. Please do. Start with your name.
My name is Brad Merrill.
Okay.
And my wife Deborah Merrill. I live at 1645 Georgian Heights Boulevard.
Okay, sir.
I'm also speaking on behalf of Jim and Maria Munson, who sent a letter in saying
yes, they have that.
And there's some other residents here as well. First off, just real quick, I think it's to be noted, this is directed to the township, that not all of us received that letter or anything in the mail. I don't think all of us received that letter in its entirety for the residents that back onto that property. After an email that was received by Jim and Maria Munson, they were the only ones. I didn't get an email. However, having been told by my neighbor, Jim, hey, did you get this? No, we did not. I reached out to the township, and I did receive and at that point, you sent the responses from a meeting 2 years ago from the questions we had, township's responses, and then the consultants' responses, which I have a copy of, and mostly all read it by now. However, Brad did mention his email at 5 p.m. on Friday. Could you review this and everybody review this and have it back to us by the end of the Monday? We thought that was fine. And there's people traveling, people away, people haven't even seen it yet. And here we are sitting in it. So that was that's directed to the township that I don't think that was fair. So moving on, for the most part, I want to state right off the get-go, we are not against this development, and the folks that are in this room, as well as, and they'll have a chance to speak, we're not against the development, but we have concerns that we feel need to be addressed. And that's been sent to the township. I know Mark got a copy from Jim and Maria Munson. I think we may have copied you, Mr. Burkett or Mayor. So we're aware of what our concerns are. And we stated in those emails, we are not against it, but we do have some serious concerns. So that moving forward, I guess you could say everybody's happy. There's 4 items I want to address. One is the wells, which has been we've chatted about the overland water issues that Derek's fully aware of. Adding fill to the site regarding the wetlands that it is, and being how we put septic systems in those properly, and where some of the houses are going based on the 15-meter buffer setback that Brandi spoke of, which we could probably pull up in a minute. May I just start with, I'm going to leave wells to the end because that is the number one issue. Second would be overland water. And then, so I'm going to just start with the septic systems. We're just concerned with all the seeps in this property and the way this property, in simple terms, Georgian Heights is here, approximately 100 to 200 feet above what's called sea level. And then we simply, the escarpment drops. And throughout that, it does a bit of this, then there's quite a bit of a drop down, and then levels off to what would be the proposed road. There's many seeps throughout that, if you've seen it, or could be probably shown on the maps, but it's swamp, it's wet, you can't walk. Now, it's understandable that to build homes in wherever they're going to be, that has to be filled, backfilled, and again, that's in the report that was received. We're just concerned about where the septic systems are going to go and how much they're going to take out. They're obviously going to have to remediate and put in the proper soils to accept these septic systems, the waste systems, to make sure that doesn't, they don't malfunction and end up with problems with Wabashing Bay. We're just concerned that is done properly. Back to number 3 is in lots, if it's possible for Brandi to bring up page 3 of her presentation. Is Brandi able to do that? Hi, Brandi.
Hi, yes, I will get that for you.
May I?
Yeah, can you see that?
Okay, so what we have here, it's nice to hear that there's going to be a 30 meter or 90 feet roughly buffer between this. This flows heavily in every rain. My home, my wife and I's home's here, the Munsons are here. These 2 lots is where there's, I guess you could say, an escarpment or a cliff, and it cuts down through like so. Our 2 questions are, the Munsons and the Merrills, is where are the homes going to go on this? Because right at the back of our property in here is a level area that is full of seeps. It's muck. You can't walk through it. Then there's a cliff that drops down. A very dramatic drop of many feet. And then it levels off to a flat area here. So in reality, if I put the pen here, that would be the cliff. It would make sense that this home would go there. There's land for it. Here on this lot, how are they going to get a home up here? And then, as long as I suppose it's behind the 15 meter, it would work. The Munson's concerns are, where is the home going to go on that lot? And I guess the same for us. We're just, how are they going to grade hills like this with water that is naturally just flowing through? If you're just going to rely, and of course, I guess the grading would be, well, we're going to put the home here and we're going to grade it this way to this and that way to that lot. And then maybe some the grading in between to send it down and get picked up. I guess it's all doable, but there's concerns that we wanted to show on those 2 lots where the homes go. And if I may, you can see this. You can see the green part is the 2 lots of the proposed building that we're concerned with. This would be the Merrills and the Munsons. You can see the escarpment here. And if the escarpment is there, they're going to try and fit a home there, or they're going to back it right up onto my backyard and put it there. On the Munson's case, there's no choice but to, obviously there's going to be a driveway going somehow up this escarpment, and there's going to be a home there. So the questions from the Merrills and the Munsons is what's happening there? How is that going to be dealt with? Number 3 is the overland water issue that Derek has spoke about. And we do have some concern regarding that because, as Derek said, township has been dealing with this for years, but nothing's been done. We still have water, not only on Fesserton Side Road, but right across in front of 2 of these homes, which must come somehow from the 400. And in a heavy rain, it's come right over Georgian Heights Boulevard, found its way into the ditches in front of the homes, which would back onto this project, and then works its way typically to that main runoff. But there's a flooding issue now. Current has been, Derek, you're aware of it. We spoke about this. When was our last meeting here? 2022? Not here, but on the phone. 2021, Allison? What's been done? What's been done to stop the flooding issue? You've spoken about it, and I know Jacqueline and the Stones are going to speak a bit about that pond which they own and the flooding that goes by their home. And you speak about that, but we're concerned that I suppose we're addressing the issue and you've addressed it, but not done anything. We're acknowledged that we have a flooding problem, and we just want to see at the end of the day that we take care of the existing problem before we have the property, the homes built and the development done, and we're still flooding at the top end. Water's running down that way. If we just keep it together and deal with it now, the problems that we have existing, before we compound it to the folks that are going to live down below it one day. So we're not comfortable that the townships address the existing problem first yet. And that's a major concern of ours. And then the very last situation is, and the most important and critical, is the water wells that are existing. The tests were done. When the test wells were put in down there, they chose to monitor several wells on the street. They did monitor the Merrill, our well. They did not monitor, I don't think, any others that are adjacent to this property, being across front, the back. Ours was hard. Was monitored at the very end of the Georgian Heights Court, would be Steve and Anne Marie Mills. They were monitored. They are the furthest of the homes away from this project. We're wondering and concerned how they chose what they were monitoring to make sure that the wells that are more or less adjacent to this property won't be affected. And then to get to that is, what, if any, guarantees is the developer willing to do for us if after this project is completed? So let's just say 3 years down the road, the homes are in and and we have wells that are not able to supply enough water to the existing homes. And then we have to step into the cost to either drill a new well, put in holding tanks, and so forth. And I believe a few folks will speak, Greg will speak of that. We have low output wells existing now on Georgian Heights, not all of them. Some are good, higher, and some are quite lower. So we just we're not comfortable that we're getting the answers we want from the township or perhaps the developer on how we're going to have some sort of a guarantee on and how that works. I don't know. Greg, I think will speak of that. That for me is all I have. Those are my concerns. And I do speak on behalf of Alan and Henny Meyer that couldn't make it as well. And I'm sure there's others because this kind of came together pretty quick on from our sides of things. The other question is final question is, when is this looking to be wrapped up? Does anybody know what it's, how fast does the developer want this done?
Madam Mandeville, comment?
Thank you, Chair. Did you want me just to comment to his last comment or all of those comments, or how would you like to do this?
Well, let's start at the last first. How about that?
I think any developer would tell you that they would like to start developing tomorrow, but that is obviously not happening. So we really, I mean, Brandi might want to speak to that further, but we don't really have a definite timeline. Unfortunately, as committee will know, these things do take time to review and process. The next step, if the township is satisfied, is that we would bring a recommendation report to this committee outlining potential draft plan of approval conditions, which basically means it would be approved subject to a number of conditions. So those conditions would include lots of legal things, but also detailed design for engineering of the road, the stormwater pond, all of that. So generally speaking, that's how this process would proceed. But there is no timeline associated with that at this moment. If draft plan approval is granted by the County of Simcoe, then they would have 3 years to satisfy those draft plan conditions or get an extension on those conditions. So that's kind of the best I think I could answer for timing. You may want to ask Brandi and her team if she would like to speak to that further.
Thank you, Ms. Mandeville. Ms. Clement, would you like to comment?
Sorry, thank you. In terms of timing, yeah, I think it's sort of up in the air right now because as was mentioned by Ms. Mandeville, when we obtain draft plan approval, then there is a number of conditions that also have to be satisfied, and those can take some time. So I think ideally we would like to see construction begin in 2025. But we're working still closely with the municipality on timing for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Clement. Mandeville, did you want to comment further on Mr. Merrill's comments? Initial comments?
Certainly I can comment on a few of those, and I'm sure Brandi and her team probably will be better suited to comment on some of those items. As I said, we are still, from the township's perspective, reviewing detailed design, including stormwater management. We're still reviewing the hydro-G or the hydrogeological information submitted, including well testing of the neighboring wells and all of that type of situation. So I think I would leave the engineering comments to Brandi's team as well as the dwelling placement comment. The thing I can comment on was the first submissions made by the adjacent property owner. We did hear from a couple kind of neighboring property owners that they did not receive notification. So as this committee is aware, and as we stated at the beginning in the script that the chair read, all those within 120 meters of a property line were mailed a notice for this meeting, as was the case for the previous meeting. People who previously provided their email address and requested to be notified were also sent a copy of that notice by email. So that's where some of the discrepancy on the timing lies, is that if we had people's email addresses from their previous correspondence and they requested notice via email, we provided that notice by email. Otherwise, it was sent out in standard mail. A notice was also posted on the property as well. So the Planning Act requirements were met in that regard. In terms of the timing that Mr. Merrill spoke to with regards to the comment chart, township staff wanted to release that ahead of the agenda, but that's not typically our process. As committee is aware, it's in the agenda package. So we did release it to the applicants whose email addresses we had, because we wanted to give them an opportunity to review that. However, the clerk will tell you the agenda deadline is the agenda deadline. So if we wanted that, if those residents wanted to in any way alter the comments that were coming in, we said they could do that. However, we would have needed them by that Monday in order to make it onto the agenda deadline. So of course, people are still able to comment right up until a decision is made by the County of Simcoe on the subdivision application and the township on the zoning application. That deadline was just provided in terms of getting on this agenda that's available on our website. And I think I'll pass it over to Brandi's team to comment on the more technical items that were discussed.
Thank you, Ms. Madeville. Ms. Clement?
Thank you. So I am going to turn this over to our project engineer who's here today, Ms. Heather Simpson. And I will say that perhaps Heather can comment on, I'm just looking at my notes. I wrote down the general location of septic systems, the location of housing. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Mr. Morrow was talking about lots 9, 10, and 11, Heather, if that helps you. So yes, I'll turn it over to you, Heather. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandi. So yes, the area that he's speaking about, the lots will be front drainers to the road. So I'll just go through a few of notes I made with regards to fill. Importation of fill will lift the houses, the proposed houses, out of the groundwater seepages and fill any wet areas. Additionally, the houses will be equipped with sump pumps to keep the groundwater away from the basements. All site grading will be designed to positively direct water away from the proposed buildings and keep water running to the desired directions. So along this side, 8, 9, and 10 that Mr. Merrill's referring to, they will be front draining lots towards the road and the roadside ditches to collect drainage. So there'll be side yard swales draining to the road ditches. In regards to drainage, we did note a large external drainage area upstream of Georgian Heights and have accounted that into our drainage calculations. The flooding, however, on Georgian Heights is upstream of the site and outside the scope of the site work proposed. So if the township wants us to investigate that as a separate flooding issue, we can do so. In regards to site grading, as I said, water will be directed away from the buildings and the septic beds will be raised with imported sand so that they function properly and meet the required design, the township design standards. And yeah, and I was just going to say this will be done, through site grading away from the septic beds will be achieved through side yard swales, ditches, storm sewers, and stormwater management ponds to deal with overland flow and collect the drainage to the desired locations.
Thank you. Can you state your name for the clerk, please?
Sorry, Heather Simpson.
Thank you.
Heather, would you be able to just generally answer where you've cited, because I know for some of the preliminary engineering that's had to have been completed for some of our submissions, you have cited homes generally or building envelopes. I'm not going to say homes because there are no designed homes yet, like building footprints for any of these lots. But there are certainly, when they're going through their grading exercises and the engineering submissions, there is like a building envelope that's provided that the engineers work with. And so I do know, and Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, there's some on some of the lots, certainly perhaps in 9, 10, and 11 vicinity, there are some challenges with the topography. And so there have been sightings that are located closer to the internal roadway, I believe. I believe on those lots, they're sort of sited a little bit further up towards the street A, as we're calling it right now. But maybe you can just provide a general location for those, Heather, or let the committee know as well as the public.
Sure. Thank you, Brandi. Yes, there is some challenges with grading to tie into the treed buffer at the back of the lots. And we did do, as Brandi noted, we did do a schematic lot grading plan and siting plan for the houses. And we have achieved those through meeting, max driveway slopes towards the road. So it's all front draining, and set the houses back and away from the water courses as required. Potentially there could be some sloping and or retaining walls required on 8 and 9 to meet the minimum standards required, or maximum standards, I guess, required by the municipality to grade these lots. But there is quite a bit of room and to achieve this, and the dwellings have been sized appropriately to ensure that they will work with the size of the lot, and same with the raised leaching beds on each of those lots. So we have achieved what the township requires for those the size of those lots to ensure that the dwellings will work, and that they will function, the septics will function properly.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Simpson. Mr. Merrill, do you have any further comments? Ms. Simpson would like to comment?
I apologize, but I cannot hear what he is saying.
No, sorry, we didn't catch any of that. I don't know if the mic's off.
Oh. Yeah, my apologies. Got it. Just regarding lots 10 and 11. You spoke of lots 8 and 9, but 10 and 11 is where the land drops off and has more or less of a cliff running through the middle of 11 and on the south side of 10. We'd like to know where you're proposing the homes will be placed on those two lots. Are we able to know that? It sounds to me like Brandi mentioned that has been considered, where a home will go on each lot based on the lay of the land. Are we able to find out about that?
Yes. So for lot 10, the house has been pushed. The house and septic have been pushed closer to the road and away from the environmental easement and setback from the channel through the center of the site. So we, you know, there is some challenges there with grading. However, we have achieved siting the house by doing so, by pushing it to the front and keeping it closer to the right of way, and then tying it in tight with the lot line between the two. And then similarly, 11 is somewhat the same, where the house is sitting closer to the road. The septics will both be on the roadside, closer to the road, on the roadside of each lot from the house. So it will go road, septic, house on both of those lots, and then they will be pushed as close as they can towards the right of way to assist with some of the grading challenges in the rear of the lots.
Okay, but looking at number 10, lot 10, it seems like that doesn't make sense to me, that you've got the home going right on the cliff at the front of the lot. I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't make sense. Pardon me? Did you see what I see? So that's not my concern. It doesn't make sense. To me, it seems like the house has to go to the back of the lot, not the front of the lot. But if that's what you're saying, it's going at the front of the lot, I guess you're on land.
I think you're speaking about the ridge that cuts through those two lots, which will be cut down. So it will be lowered there to get the grading to work, because we have to match minimum or maximum slopes for the driveways. So some of that ridge will be removed to grade those two lots.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simpson. Anyone else present in the chambers who'd like to speak? Please come forward, state your name.
My name's Greg Stevens, and my wife June Stevens. We're at 1725 Georgian Heights Boulevard. The concern that we've been talking about is the quantity of water to the wells, and there are some of our residents that are very limited today on well capacity, and the concern, of course, is that this has a negative impact, and if it becomes less, it'll be an expense to the homeowner to try and fix it. So I was thinking that if we quantify to some degree the cost of a remedy, okay, so let's assume that you're going to do a holding tank cistern system to fix a problem if it occurs, and that cost would probably be $25,000 or $30,000. I'd like to see the developer have to create a deposit or a fund similar to what I think the township does today as a grading deposit. So let's say there's 6 homes at $30,000. Like, it's not a huge amount of money, but maybe there could be a consideration of $250,000, $300,000 set aside, because there's always going to be litigation administration fees on top of the actual cistern. So if there was a contingency that after this whole thing, like, we're never going to know what's going to happen until the project is completed. So once the 14 homes are in, once a year goes by and everybody seems to be okay, then the money can be refunded. But if 2 or 3 of the people have been negatively impacted, then there's a fund separate. We don't want the municipality, like the township, to have to pay this. The developer should be responsible, in my opinion, so that there's some money ready, so that there's not a huge litigation expense. Could that be a consideration? And that way, I'm just trying to quantify the whole thing, because right now everybody's talking about if comes and maybes and who knows what. So let's put, like when the rubber hits the road, put a dollar figure on it, and make a reserve. I'd like that to be considered. Thank you.
Ms. Clement, comment?
Thank you. This is certainly something we can take back to the owner of the lands and then further discuss with the municipality. I don't really have any comment on it at this time. I will note, though, that it is the developer's responsibility to monitor the surrounding wells during construction, just to make sure that there are no concerns or issues. And so this is something that through the municipality and through the requirements that it will be watched and will be monitored. But yes, that at this point would be my only comment on that.
Any further comment from anyone? Brad, anything on the phone? Nothing? Or maybe we'll recognize Ms. Mandeville.
Thank you, Chair. I did just want to share a comment. I had emailed to June Stevens previously in part of this discussion. So part of our discussion, and if our peer reviewer decides it is warranted, we have, as a municipality, approved other developments with what's called a well monitoring program, where the neighboring wells are monitored before development, during construction, after development. That well monitoring program has securities posted by the developer, and should neighboring wells be affected in years from now after homes are built, then that security the developer provided to the municipality is utilized to correct those issues. So if that is something our peer reviewer recommends, which, as Ms. Clement has just stated, it's still up for discussion. We still haven't completed that Hydro G aspect of this development yet. Then that's definitely something we as staff would be recommending as part of this development approval. We're just not, unfortunately, there yet at this time. So I did just want to reiterate that. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions as well.
Anyone else? Anything for? Yes, please come forward. State your
name. June Stevens, 1725 Georgian Heights. Okay, back in 2021, I had a meeting at our house with Bonnie, the rep from Burnside, and two of the neighbors to do with monitoring wells, when they only had 3 wells up at the time. And she assured, yes, they would monitor our 3 wells. Well, with my big mouth, I said, yeah, we only get 7 gallons a minute, where the other 2 got over 20. So when I text Bonnie after a couple of months, I want to know the result of our well. Oh, we decided not to monitor your well. Oh, okay. Our neighbor in front gets 2.5 to 3. She can't shower and run her dishwasher at the same time. She asked Burnside to monitor. They told her no. Yet they had 2 girls walk the street talking to everybody, wanted to know the amount of water they got, and they picked and chose those that had water to monitor. Why are we discriminated against that have poor water? And all that same side that we're on, a lot of people have poor water. We came from 2 houses that had 40 gallons a minute. Now we had no idea. We were down to 7, and only got 7 because Greg was on site when they were drilling, and they were going to stop at 3. And Greg said, keep drilling. So 500 yards later, we got 7. Okay, just let you know that we want to make sure we do not lose any water. We can't afford it. We can't sell a house without water. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Anyone else? Anything further? Katie, did you have anything further to, or Brad? Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. There was no additional correspondence received, written correspondence received, other than what was included on the agenda as part of today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Ms. Clement, do you have anything further?
Thank you. No, I do not at this time.
Well, committee, anybody have any comments or questions, please? Member Brennan.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think to Katie, I'll just preface this by saying I'm always horrified when I hear about water issues. I know for my ward, water issues are becoming, they're number two in the concerns I get in the last 2 years, quickly outpacing complaints over roads. And it relates to short, intensive storms like we had just a few days ago and like we had last August. It is a serious and expensive concern for both the taxpayer and homeowner. Looking at I have a number of questions, and they're questions I think that have been asked here. Is this a wetland? Is this classed as a wetland?
Through the chair to member Brennan. It is not a coastal wetland, and it is not a provincially significant wetland in accordance with the environmental studies and peer review provided. There is a portion of the property that is mapped currently as an unevaluated wetland, and that is around that drainage course that we've been discussing.
So it probably has wetland species growing on it. I mean, to me, that's how you answer the question. If it's unevaluated, then we don't know. Okay, so that's question one. So it's interesting, you got two water issues here. There's the well issue, which is very disturbing, and there's the potential of threat of flooding, which is equally disturbing, and insurance rates are showing that clearly across Canada right now. So these are big issues. I'm just wondering, in the statement by the what do we call these? The notice. The request that came forward was, if you look at purpose and effect, bullet 1, and I quote, and to not withstand the environmental protection zone setbacks, as the proposed environmental protection zone boundary incorporates the setback. I guess my question from a planning point of view is, if you already know you have challenges in an area, why would you put more units or any units in an area like that? And why would you lower the specifications for protection in an area like that? To me, isn't that where it should kick in at its best?
Through the chair to member Brennan's question, great question about the EP setbacks. So within the township zoning bylaw, a setback to the EP property zoning, so the EP boundary, environmental protection boundary, our zoning bylaw only has a 3-meter setback to that within a settlement area. If you're outside of a settlement area, that distance increases to 10 meters, I believe. But within a settlement area, so such as this property, it would only be a 3-meter setback to the environmental protection zone. So what was recommended through the environmental report and our peer reviewer is to, instead of relying on lay individuals, property owner, future property owners, to know that 3-meter setback from that EP line, is that we actually incorporate a larger setback, in this case, into the environmental protection zone, so that we're designated or zoning that entire swath that should be protected, rather than imposing a setback from the EP zone. We're incorporating the setback and the feature within the EP zone, which is not how our bylaws is worded at this time.
Mr. Oster.
I would just add for the committee and the public, the EP zone that would not withstand the setback is only the site-specific EP zone that is established for the tree buffer. The EP zone that would be for the environmental easement that goes through the property, that would still continue to have the setback as well.
Just a couple more comments then. The overland flow issues are definitely a concern. I know if I were any of the people that spoke today, I would definitely want them solved before any other new issues were created. So I can understand and appreciate that position. The placement of septic systems, like it just, here we got, everything's got to be done with fill. It's just, it's as if there's no dry land in this country anymore. We always seem to have to put these things in places where there are these big challenges, and I just find it disturbing. Can we be assured then that these septic systems are going to function in accordance to the way one would expect them to perform? Is that something that's assured? The other issue, of course, was the matter of monitoring and coverage, and I fully appreciated your comments with regard to the monitoring and review. I guess that's a form of financial assurance. Am I reading that correctly? I mean, financial assurance has been used to protect the government against different things, and I think what I'm hearing is, look, can you guarantee us that we're not going to have problems? And the only way I know you can do that is if there's a big pot of money sitting aside for about 10 years to say, we'll pay for it if we broke it. I'm just throwing that out. I don't see that as unreasonable. This is a big investment, these homes. But anyway, that's my question on that.
Through the chair to Member Brennan's question. Yeah, I suppose what you've summarized is one way to look at a well monitoring program. Yes. Essentially it is collecting money for insurance or we call it securities for that purpose and continuing to monitor those wells. So again, not something that we finalized for this development, but we have done that on other developments where, water quantity or quality may be an issue with the neighboring properties. I did just want to comment as well to your first comment about perhaps the site not being ideal for residential development. Although we're still working through everything, this property is within a settlement area, which is where we have to direct growth. The province is really heavily directing houses to be built. This subdivision was already developed without this property being part of that. As Brandi mentioned, it is a block on an existing plan of subdivision. So unfortunately, as I tell people, all the ideal properties have already been developed. Every easy property that there was to develop within these settlement areas has already been developed. So it is true that every application you're seeing seems like it has some kind of hurdle or some kind of issue, and that's why it wasn't developed until this point. So, it could be with settlement boundary expansions, with everything else coming down from the province that we'll start seeing, more easier properties coming on board. But certainly that is a concern, residents are seeing, we as staff are seeing, everyone's seeing, is that, these previously vacant properties were left vacant for a reason for the most part.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee? Okay, Member Jansen.
Okay, thank you very much. And through the chair, I guess to Mr. Burke, around the diagram that you showed, it seems to be acknowledged that we do have some water drainage issues, not only on Fesserton Side Road, but over the Georgian Heights subdivision that's currently exists, and then running down into this property. I see that we're going to be putting in stormwater ponds within the development, which I think is great, but that only solves the problem after the water gets down there. Is there plans to coordinate some sort of fix while this development goes in, or prior to this development goes in, or are we going to wait to see what happens and then do the work that the township needs to do?
So through the chair, if I can, that's a great question and a good prelude to sort of the next steps. You know, following draft plan approval, there's certainly a lot of back and forth that goes on with the township staff and the developers about reviewing engineering submissions, the stormwater management plan, more specific details. And we're not adverse to, you know, not seeking a relationship with the developer to solve some drainage concerns that exist today. You know, but that, you know, that's not necessarily advanced far enough. I think we know we have a challenge. We have some infrastructure that was created in some events. 1918 is a stamp on one of the box culverts that's out there. So, you know, it's got a number of years on some of this infrastructure and may not be sufficient in terms of capacity, you know, with today's level of rainfall events. So, yeah, we understand we have a project out there eventually. We have a need, and we do coordinate with the developers where we can to seek solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Burke, and Ms. Mandeville. The well monitoring program, I think it probably sounds like it makes sense for what we're hearing has happened in the existing Georgian Heights neighborhood. I'm just wondering, to Ms. Stevens' comments, would there be a process for random selection of monitoring so that there is no bias or perceived bias when it comes to the way that the program is handled?
Through the chair to Member Jansen's questions. Absolutely, this is something we're obviously going to look into with our peer reviewer. That's, you know, a great example of why we have a peer reviewer for this type of application and for these types of studies, since we don't, on township staff, we don't have a hydrogeologist, and, you know, residents wouldn't want us to have one because it would just be cost prohibitive. So certainly the comments made today, previous comments, are going to be shared with our hydrogeologist. So if it is a case that only certain wells were chosen to be included in these studies, you know, for flow purposes or whatnot, then that is something we're going to, as staff, direct our hydrogeologist to look into. So again, I'm not necessarily saying a well monitoring program is our recommendation at the time for this site. We have done it on other sites, and we'll be looking to that professionals that we've hired at the developer's expense to guide us on what path is appropriate here. And unfortunately, we're just not at this step yet, which does remind me, I was going to mention Clement's team had requested this meeting today, and that's why we're here. Generally speaking, we have a first meeting pretty early in the process to advise the public of, you know, an application that was submitted. And then generally speaking, we have a second meeting once most of the questions are answered and staff is generally satisfied. It may not be a perfect process, but it is one we've done here for a number of years. Having said that, the Planning Act no longer requires any public meetings for plans of subdivision. So I did just want to highlight that. Yeah, it is something we're still working through, and absolutely the comments made today and as well as in the past will be put to our peer reviewer for comments. And if wells were randomly selected or not is something we're going to be looking at.
Okay, so supplemental. I know it's a process. I understand that. And I think it's great that we've got experts that are handling this. I guess when a report will most likely come back, whether staff does recommend a well monitoring program, I'm just wondering, and I'm still new here, does council have the ability to make that recommendation or to request that well monitoring program be put in place during this development?
I believe they could, you know, so basically how the process works is that we would bring suggested draft plan of subdivision conditions forward for council's consideration. It would be up to the county of Simcoe ultimately to decide what conditions of draft plan approval are imposed, because the county, at least right at this moment, is the approval authority for subdivisions. That could change, you know, next month, tomorrow, whatever. So it may be within council's direction. I think certainly we've heard those comments today, and we'll be asking our peer reviewer if that is an appropriate avenue for this property. So, you know, I don't want to speak for our peer reviewer, but I think Brandi's team has heard all of these comments today, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's a suggestion going forward.
Thank you very much.
Member Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank everyone for coming today. First question I have is the correspondence received here. Will the questions asked there be answered? And who would do that? If Katie can answer that.
Yes. Sorry, through the chair to Member Taylor's question. Yeah, so what happened last time is we took all those questions, and then you'll see the chart and the agenda that, you know, Ms. Clement's team put together to try and answer those questions. So I would expect that following this meeting, a similar chart would be put together. So those who are looking for responses, if we do have their email address, which most people we have now, we could relay that information back to them once that submission has been made. Just especially because there's not another public meeting scheduled for this matter. So we could try and relay that information via email back.
Thank you. Through the chair, on page 22, the proposed zoning exemptions, and I'm just curious what staff thinks. It doesn't apply to all 14 lots, but it does apply to many. And in some cases, you're only hitting 36% of the required, and in most cases, 50%. And I'm just curious if you could pop up to that page 29 of the report. Someone, we can have a look at it. Page 29. Of the agenda package, page 29.
Can I, through the chair, just clarify what you're looking at there on page 29? Oh, on Brandi's presentation.
Yes, on the Jones presentation, but page 29 of our agenda.
Okay.
I believe the consultant said that this really only applied to lots 1, but how many of the 14 lots are identified here?
Through the chair, I'm wondering if Brandi could speak to this.
Yes, thank you. So what I was stating is that you always zone to your smallest lot, and that is lot 1, but the zoning that we're requesting does apply to all 14 of the lots. But sort of what I meant by saying that is it doesn't necessarily mean that, I think whomever's sharing their screen showing an email. It doesn't necessarily mean that every single lot will have that sort of exception, if that makes sense. So for example, the smallest lot is 2,900 square meters. There are some lots that are 4,000 square meters, 6,000 square meters, 9,000 square meters. So although we're asking for those exceptions on the entire property, the exceptions vary per lot. And that would be primarily for lot area and frontage. Certainly when it comes to setbacks, like the minimum front yard setback, the rear yard setback, the interior, those would all be related to each property itself. Like they'd all be the same across the board for each property, or lot coverage for that matter. Does that answer your question?
Not really. I couldn't really hear you, but I'm just wondering if staff could respond from a planning perspective, what you think of the proposed exemptions on this zoning application.
Through the chair to Member Taylor, staff have not completed a planning analysis at this time for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. We are just basically here to gather comments and feedback. I will state that I believe it was the original proposal provided by Ms. Clement was a different proposal for zoning, and we did work with her to, instead of the R1 zone, which is most common in settlement areas. So just for context sake, a private services lot in the zoning bylaw for the R1 zone is only required a maximum lot area of 4,000 square meters. and the minimum front yard setback is 7.5 meters. The minimum rear yard setback is 7.5 meters. So essentially, from first glance, what this zoning bylaw amendment is achieving is a kind of hybrid zone between estate residential and R1. And that's essentially just because of the lot fabric, because some of those lots are very large in character, which is more like an estate residential subdivision. Some of the lots are smaller in character, which is more in line with a settlement area, which is what this is. Certainly there could be some alterations to come still in terms of the zoning that's proposed, or perhaps the subdivision will contain some lots with an ER state residential exemption. Some lots perhaps will have an R1 zone. If that's the route that Brandi's team proposes and that staff are comfortable with, but we have not done a full planning analysis on that zoning bylaw application.
Okay, thank you through the chair. Now, water's the big issue here. So over to you, Derek. Water runoff. You had another slide that you could show where the water is coming from the north near the 400 highway.
Through the chair, yeah, I can bring back up the map that shows I think we believe to be the source of some of this water coming down Fesserton as original. And it definitely comes from the neighboring municipality and the highway. Yeah, let me just see if I can share that one more time. I think that'll come up on the screen here in a minute. So in this area, I gotta hide that over here. This is the water course crossing Highway 400 parallel with Fesserton Side Road, and that generates the quantity of water that we see that's impacting some of the videos that we saw and some of the photos. The catchment area contributing to the north side of the road is quite minimal. From about this point onwards, all drainage goes to the north and to the outlets that we've discussed here earlier today that will go through this proposed plan of subdivision. Does that assist? Oh, sorry, a little bit larger. Yeah, so these are the big pockets of draining lands that come under the highway. Yeah. Turn off the zoning if that helps. And wetland features. Yeah, so that's what we have for mapping. You can see quite a bit of lands here, all drained through this one cross culvert there, or parallel set. And that's what's really contributing to the volume of water coming down Fesserton Side Road. Yes, through the chair, just to kind of confirm, these little blobs of purple are easements. So they were secured at the time of plan of subdivision for Georgian Heights, recognizing the natural watercourse path, kind of historical drainage pattern, crossing the highway again, all very parallel with the orientation of Fesserton Side Road. This one's quite a bit, about half a block to the north, and generally speaking, heading for Matchdash Bay.
Okay, through the chair, can I continue? So it seems after every long rainstorm, this is a common occurrence, and we've seen videos. Even last July 13th, it poured down there. So, Derek, this has been on our abeyance list for some time. What is the plan? What's your plan going forward? It's going to be costly, but how do you see the crystal ball? Can we get this thing corrected before the subdivision goes in?
So through the chair, I think maybe to work a little backwards, I'm not entirely sure they are tied events. You know, we do have a plan of subdivision that's outside of the drainage path of particularly Fesserton Side Road. Georgian Heights may be a bit different of that watercourse crossing, but like anything in the township, we have a list of needs throughout the township in every asset class. We have road renewal needs, we have bridge and structure renewal needs. We have capacity improvement needs here at the administration facility level. And what we do is we bind those needs together and prepare an asset management plan, and we forecast and provide recommendations for improvements as we go. I think in short, we understand that this is a priority, one of the more priorities anyway, to bring forward a report. We can discuss what that looks like in terms of cost, what that looks like in terms of timing, and then ultimately it's bringing back to a capital funding request that needs to be approved for works to actually be undertaken. So that's the general process. I think it's important to recognize we do have a lot of needs, and there's actually a few areas very similar to this that all draw on the capital dollars that we have.
Okay, thank you. I'll continue if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, carry on, Mark.
So the elephant in the room is the wells on Georgian Heights, and hopefully the question about random selection or pre-selection should be entertained to see why some people were picked and some weren't. But I think what we need is a definition of a well monitoring program. What are we meaning there? And maybe it does mean a deposit by the developers in case a well does go dry, that these people aren't hung out to dry. So I think it's very important that we have a clear definition of what that means. But on the township's response on page 48 of the agenda from June Stevens on Georgian Heights Boulevard, it's one of the responses from the township says, advise to speak with lawyer. And could the township please tell me what does that mean? Page 48 of the agenda.
Through the chair to member Taylor's question. So I'm looking at some black text within that column, which means that Jones Consulting wrote that comment. So I would pass that over to Ms. Clement for a response if you'd like.
Ms. Clement.
So if I recall, the matrix that's being referred to was put together following the public information session that was had, or the open house 2 years ago. I apologize. I'm really not sure. I can't answer that question for you. I'm not sure the context as to what was said at that time or what the discussion was. So I apologize.
So that was your interpretation of what the township response was? Is that?
Well, we wrote notes. Well, just like I'm writing notes right now of what was said sort of back and forth. And so, yeah, that would have been something that we wrote down and then we populated in the matrix. So I apologize. I just do not remember the context of the discussion at all.
Could be continued. No, but it's under the township response column. Anyway.
Carry on, Member Taylor.
Okay. No one's mentioned xylene here. And do we have a clear answer that there's no harmful levels of xylene on the property where the subdivision is going in?
Member Clements, or Madam Clements.
Thank you. I will ask, we have our hydrogeologists online to answer any specific questions such as this. And so I will ask Ms. Stephanie Charity if she could provide some answers on that question. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. The xylene that you're referring to, I believe was detected in the geotechnical report investigation that was completed, and it was found at one of the boreholes in the fill material, and that finding has triggered a phase 1 and phase 2 for record of site condition that will be required as part of this development, which will address any contamination concerns based on the Ministry of Environment regulations. So,
So through the chair, Katie, is that part of our peer review as well?
Through the chair to member Taylor, record of site condition is a Ministry of the Environment process as noted. So it is not something the township peer reviews. It's not within our jurisdiction as the ministry handles all records of site condition.
Okay, I continue through the chair. I know it states that the Planning Act says we don't have to have public meetings for a plan of subdivision, but this is showing clearly we need public input. And since we haven't heard anything since December of 2021, this is the second required meeting according to our bylaw. And I think we need at least one more, maybe two more to get feedback from the public. I know notice was put, some people got the notices, some didn't, but the notice on Fesserton Side Road was on letter-sized paper and you had to stop, pull in and look at it. And other instances, there's big white signs that say, hey, there's a public meeting coming up. This is a very hot topic and we should let everyone know what's happening. And I think we dropped the ball on that one. So I'm certainly in favor of having another public meeting. To me, there's more unanswered questions since 2021 than there is today. And we've had 2.5 years and we haven't got any answers here. And it doesn't look good and we shouldn't be rushing this thing through.
Thank you. Member Minnings.
I thank you through the chair. I have 4 questions, but they're short, and one comment. I also have I wonder if there's an opportunity, I guess I'm addressing this to the clerk, about at the end of this, when you put forward a motion for us, if there is something that we can capture for the minutes and for the record, so that 3 years don't go by and perhaps, you know, another council sitting here, and because I wasn't at the December 2021 conversation, so I'm catching up around the well monitoring program, because I think that's something that we can determine right now, realizing that Ms. Mandeville did say it's a peer review. There's County of Simcoe, other things involved, but a recommendation from this council that it not be certain wells checked. It's a small area, it's an important issue, and it's ongoing. That well monitoring happens for existing and new builds when it does happen. So that's my first. My next question is, Ms. Mandeville, you mentioned that the township is still reviewing hydrogeological reports with respect to water quality and water quantity. My question is this proposal and is this conversation today not premature as far as next steps, et cetera? Because until we get those answers, I don't think we have enough answers to move forward in the process. So that's my first question.
Through the chair to member Minnings, as I did state, the applicant requested this public meeting to be held today. It would not typically have been when staff would have recommended it be scheduled. As developers are always anxious to appear that they're moving their files forward, it was something they requested. And as we have done for other files, when someone requests a public meeting, typically we schedule one. So that's why we're here today.
Thank you. And that's what I wanted to hear, because further to that, since this is a public meeting and it was previously stated also by staff that we normally only have 2 public meetings. So as you acknowledged, it likely is premature. And I like public meetings. I think we should have more of them, just like Member Taylor said. So because this was requested maybe earlier in the process than township staff might have done, I think that we need to hold space and commit to that. My next question, I guess, is to Mr. Burke, and you did speak somewhat to it, but I still don't have an answer that I can wrap my head around as to the challenges and opportunities in the township with your staff to address the existing water quality, quantity, and flooding issues. So I'm hearing that this narrative is not new. And I understand the priorities on the capital projects. That's 100% true, but there's been a window of time, and I'd like your best recommendations to us on where on the priority scale water quality, quantity, and flooding should be happening so that council can make some decisions, financial or otherwise, on this really important issue.
Certainly, thank you. And just to the three quadrants, I guess, of water control, the primary one here is actually quantity. While quality certainly is of interest, it's the flooding I think we're really got our initial concerns about. The next steps are to report back to council with, what would be a capital project? What would that look like? And when would we recommend that? To action that, we certainly will, endeavor to do that in the near future, especially as we work our way through some of these additional comments and concerns, and more particularly as we see rainfall events that result in overflow. We've seen one on, I think it was June 2020. We hadn't had one for a little while in between there, and then there was a 21, and I believe there's been a recent one here in 24. But in the history of that infrastructure dating back, somewhat down to 1918, we're seeing this more and more now, and not so much, in its longer form. What will come is a capital request, so some pretty substantial dollars that council will need to consider. That's new infrastructure, that's design work, and so that is sort of what's next to really solve that problem.
Okay, thank you. And one final question. And actually, Mr. Merrill raised it, and it's not the first time I've heard it here at the council table, and that is about notice to residents about meetings, et cetera, that are going on. And we had a similar conversation, and I said the same thing earlier this year when we had a public meeting like this at this committee related to the Minoki Beach area subdivision in West Shore around, and the response is that township process, because I don't think it's a policy, and this is going to be my question. Currently, the township process is that we provide notices to residents within 120 meters of a site, and to those who have previously stated in writing that they would like to be informed of a specific issue. And back during the West Shore conversation, I really had a problem with 120 meters. So whether we're talking about the 5G tower in a rural area, et cetera, in the scheme of things, it's a very small area. And I would like to see that expanded. So my question is that an internal process, and perhaps it's for the CAO, or is that something that's a policy and council should set and really look at what makes sense so that we can do our jobs as elected officials to get all the public input that we can on any given issue that comes to council?
Madam CAO.
Thank you, through the chair. It's a Planning Act requirement, but it is a minimum. So I have worked at other places that for certain kinds of files, council has directed, I think it's in our Katie's going to correct me because I'm wrong here, but I have seen it where council has directed for certain types of applications to expand the notice. But I've said something wrong clearly. So, I don't know that I'm not the Planning Act expert, but.
Madam Mandeville.
Thank you, Chair. And no, sorry, you did not say something wrong. I didn't mean to panic you. Just that council, to my knowledge, cannot direct that unless it's in the official plan. So other municipalities have what's called alternative notice provisions. The Planning Act allows currently at this moment, I'm not sure if in the future, but currently at this moment, the Planning Act allows for what's called alternative notice provisions. Those can be stipulated for types of applications. It would have to be a specific type of application. You couldn't just, pick and choose. But that could be something we look at in our new OP since it's not approved by the county yet. I did want to mention that we also did post this notice on our website. So it was available as part of our website, which was something that came out of previous meetings such as this. So sorry, I should have said that earlier, that was added to the website as well. We would have to, as staff, look into if the Planning Act changes allow for the alternative notice provisions still as well. But that is something we could look at for our OP.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. That's good information to have. And it really reiterates for me. I've been hearing this over and over now about how important our official plan is. And I feel for myself, it's unfortunate that, I know the official plan was set by the previous council, but that, I had some orientation and we looked at it within my first few months of being here, but it seems like whether it's this issue, notices, doggy daycare, on and on, it all goes back to that official plan, which is currently still yet unapproved. So further to that, what can we do at this meeting so that going forward on this issue, that people are notified outside of the things that are currently set?
Madam CAO.
Thank you. I think hearing what council's asking for, you probably don't want to tie it to this particular subdivision. So I think it would be a great opportunity for a councillor to bring forward a report directing staff to look into alternative notice process. I think it's a separate process. If I may, through the chair, can I just go back to the public meeting things? And again, not necessarily related to this subdivision,
Sure.
but with all the changes to the Planning Act and the provincial focus on build homes faster, regardless of whether you have infrastructure or all the other things. That's a bit of editorial on my part, but council just has to balance. We hear your desire for public meetings, but I'm hearing from other developers, you guys get faster or we're just going to appeal you. So we have to be careful not to go outside of what the Planning Act allows. Otherwise you risk the risk of appeal, which is fine. Developers have the right to appeal and council has the right to defend. But it costs a lot of money. So it's always better to work through a solution. So I'm not sure where your council is at more public meetings. I'm not sure if they're allowed, but that's the risk if we're going above and beyond what the current rules provide. And I hear why you want it, but that's the balance. It's just to say if we force developers, and again, not related to this develop, just in general, because I'm hearing this from lots of developers, be faster, follow the provincial rules, or we'll see you at the board and you'll pay big dollars. So I just wanted to put that out there for council.
Thank you. Noted. However, my comments around public meetings are within township, and so not necessarily developer meetings. So it's not about forcing them. The other thing is that what I really liked hearing, and by the way, I had a tour of your subdivision the first year we started, and it's beautiful out there. And I understand, and appreciate the fact that the comments were that you're not against development, and it's really about the blend. And I think that's within our control to hear more. So you've heard it. Reach out to any or all of us outside of any kinds of meetings. But unless I know about things, I'm sure the other councillors or councillor may. But I appreciate knowing about things, because then we can see what we can do, on the recommendation of the township staff to improve what's within our control to do that. So thank you for that.
Member Cox. Okay, sure. You want to speak?
Again.
It was a while ago.
Through the chair to Mr. Burke. Mr. Burke, on that map that you showed us, it's showing that the major amount of water is coming from Tay Township. Is this something that we can collaboratively work with them and maybe look into that? Or is it something MTO should also be involved in? Because obviously that culvert that's under their highway, like there's a lot of issues going on here. So I understand that. Is this how it's going to become complicated because of that? Or is that something we don't do? Like, is there something that may have to be done, that there's another waterway so that all of this just doesn't come at once? And I know 1918, that highway wasn't there. So I think that, I think we're looking at something that's, I could be wrong, more complicated than us just trying to fix our end because it's coming from above.
So thank you through the chair. And yeah, the 1918 structure was a railway crossing in the area. The remainder of the road was realigned in 1972, give or take. But yes, so the design process, when we kick off a capital works project to replace and renew and upgrade municipal infrastructure, the first step we do is retain an engineering firm to prepare a drainage assessment, a drainage catchment delineation area, and look for opportunities outside of just replacing municipal infrastructure. So that would include a conversation with our neighboring municipalities. But to be fair, drainage is accepted frequently between road authorities and between, even private landowners through easements, because water knows no municipal boundary. It goes.
Yeah, supplemental. I know, but I'm just saying that if that is something that we could work with them or you know what I'm saying? Because it's coming from above. It's not their fault, but it's beyond our control, the amounts that are going to come down. And that's why I wondered if when we do it, MTO and the engineer will probably discuss it with everyone. The other one was the well monitoring. It sounds like we're working on that. And I think that is something. And unfortunately, I too am on a well. And I too am in an area when new homes are built, we do find sometimes that we get it. So if there is an opportunity here to monitor after, I can understand that. We've had a couple of go dry, mine did. And these things unfortunately happen when you're on a well. And I think that and I can't remember if we've done this before, but I think we've talked about it, is that when these homes are sold, once again, I think that it needs to be put somewhere that these homes are on wells and septic, because I'm going to tell you right now, people who move here, and I'm not being mean, from the city who've always flushed their toilets and had water and sewer, do not understand wells and septic. I had a lady ask me why she didn't get a water and sewer bill, and she was on septic and a well. So they don't understand it, and they need to understand it, because when your neighbor takes a hose and starts waving it around the yard and you're going, I can't do my laundry. I wait because I have to plan these things, because that's what you do when you're on a well. So I'm just wondering if the developer, if Brandi's listening, if there's something that can put on there. And I think we also asked if there would be a folder or an information kit of some type to be given to people, because I'm not being mean about them, they just don't understand that a well that only gives you so many gallons, you can't have 3 showers a day and do 4 loads of laundry and then go out and wash your car. So if we could start to do something more like that, I think it would be very helpful for the people who are buying the home and the people who are already living in the area. So if we're going to look into that flooding issue, which is separate, I'm all for that, because we do have other areas. But other than that, I think we've covered, the residents have all stated their concerns. They're fairly similar to the concerns in 21. And once we get all the peer review in, we can have a report come back and the residents can be notified from the consultant with answers for their questions. Thank you.
Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair. It seems like this proposed development is sort of at its infancy, has a lot of struggles to move forward. My question, and I think that they would have had to have done a species at risk study. They would have at some point. Okay. My other question is, I think it was Miss Simpson, because of the sensitive nature of the area, suggested that sub pumps were going to run to our ditches. Is that something that we allow?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So in our standards and in the lot grading plans, and generally under the way we develop homes, some pumps certainly discharge to surface. And once the sump pump discharges to surface, the surface flow does generally make its way to the roadside ditch. And that's a best practice. What we prohibit and what we discourage is the physical and direct connection of the sump discharge lead into the municipal road allowance. What happens there is you have scour and erosion and infrastructure that's not municipal within the municipal roadside ditch. And that may be compromised by road ditching efforts and that sort of thing. So the goal is to get the water away from the foundation up onto the surface and grade away from the home to its next receiving body, which is typically the roadside ditch.
Thank you. Supplementary from A through the chair. So I'm curious, and I guess a question for Ms. Clement. The log grading engineers that you hired, do they physically come out to look at the piece of property and walk it to see how wet it is? I'm just curious.
I will let Heather answer that question if she can, please.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Brandi.
I couldn't hear Ms. Simpson.
Yes, Ms. Simpson here. I have been to site already to walk it. Yes, we do come out to site and we will have to sign off. A stamping engineer will have to sign off on the lot grading certification for these lots. So yes and yes.
Mr. Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair to whomever, I still think this meeting was premature. There's a lot of questions to be answered, and it requires another public meeting. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, for a moment, I'd like to pass the chair to Member Brennan so I can make a comment. I agree with Member Taylor. One more meeting wouldn't hurt. We've gone this long, this far. And I'm delighted to see that the members of the public have been here and showed their concerns regarding this matter. I'm also delighted to see that they're not opposed to anything here other than just getting some common sense concerns sorted out. The staff have, I think, bent over backwards at this moment to do what they need to do to bring the developer into line. And the developer is more than happy to do as requested by the staff through the public meeting here. I would like to see another public meeting. We've run this thing for long enough. However, and as the CIO said, it may not be through Ms. Mandeville, it may not be possible to have another public meeting, but with the changing rules at the province, we may get to that stage and it may not be even possible, but I would like to see it. I think we should have a straw poll of the committee to determine whether we should have another public meeting before we ask the clerk to call the question. And again, I'm really pleased that both sides are not opposed to anything here. I think we just got some kinks to work out along the way, and we'll probably end up getting this developed to all sides' satisfaction. So for me, I wouldn't ask the clerk, is it possible? Am I off base or am I beyond the rules to, in the middle of all this, ask for a vote from this committee for another public meeting?
Through you, Mr. Chair, circling back even to Member Manning's comment from before with respect to public meeting and the well monitoring piece that has been brought up. Staff have been working behind the scenes here to try and come forward with a revised motion rather than a straw poll, which we generally do not permit. So when you're ready, we can bring that forward. But it does include the request for an additional public meeting and staff to report regarding the potential of a well monitoring program. Because until those peer reviews are done and staff have had a chance to thoroughly look at the file, it would be premature to make that a requirement from staff's recommendation back. So.
All yours. Cool. A lot of work there.
Yes. Yeah, you're a busy guy. Thank you. We've discussed this at some length. I assume now, Madam Clerk, when I ask for a motion.
Thank you. Yes. So the updated draft motion would read that planning report number P24-015 dated April 17th, 2024, with respect to applications by 2801829 Ontario Inc. for a proposed draft plan of subdivision file number SVT 2102 and a zoning bylaw amendment Z 2114 for 3879 Town Line be received as information. And further, that township staff be directed to report back to Planning and Development Committee as the file progresses and schedule an additional public meeting with that report, including details respecting a potential well monitoring program. Sorry, I've got a couple of duplicate words in there. So I'll reread that last paragraph for you. So it'd be that staff be directed to report back to Planning and Development Committee as the file progresses and schedule an additional public meeting with that report, including details respecting a potential well monitoring program.
Additional question from Member Taylor before we call the vote.
Yeah, through the chair to Allison. So your first paragraph, it says zoning bylaw amendment Z 21-14 for 28879 Town Line.
Do I have the address? I'm just waiting for clarification.
Yeah, it should be 2970 Fesserton Road. Is that correct? And I wouldn't mind hearing it one more time.
Yes, please read the motion again, Madam Clerk.
Will do. Hang on. Okay, so the motion then reads that planning report number P24-015 dated April 17th, 2024, with respect to applications by 2801829 Ontario Inc. for a proposed draft plan of subdivision file number SVT 2102 and zoning bylaw amendment Z 2114 for 2970 Fesserton Side Road be received as information. And further, that township staff be directed to report back to Planning and Development Committee as the file progresses and schedule an additional public meeting with that report, including details respecting a potential well monitoring program.
Request from Member Burkett to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Just to Mr. Merrill's comments about not being circulated and the fact that some of the residents may not be aware. So just, you need to reach out to the township, I think, and request that you are circulated rather than thinking, because someone said that we weren't transparent. I can't remember which resident, and that we're far from that. So that if you could just reach out to our planning staff, make sure that you state that you would like to be circulated on the next public meeting, and you only have a week in advance to hear about it. We won't know before that. We get the same time frame as the residents do. Is that correct? Katie's going to correct me. Thank you.
Through the chair to Member Burkett's comments, the Planning Act requires notice to go out 20 days in advance for a zoning bylaw amendment. So we did mail the notice at least 20 days in advance, maybe a little bit more than that. And then we sent the email that same day to those people who had requested notice. So if anyone did not get the email and wants an email next time, then if they reach out to township staff and share their email, we will follow that same process again.
Next, Member Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair to Katie, assuming this goes through, further to what the mayor was saying, could, instead of having small pieces of paper for notice, could we get the traditional white board that goes up to say, here's your next meeting. You've got 20 days in advance, so everyone knows. A lot of people drive by there, may not all have internet, and we got to go back to the old system sometime, and I'd like to see that.
Ms. Mandeville.
The Township of Severn, in my time here, has never done those white poster board signs. Sometimes developers do them on their own accord, but the township does not require that. We don't have alternative notice provisions. We don't require those signs. So we as township staff only post the sign that you're referring to. So sometimes developers go above and beyond that and post those larger signs. This property does have a larger sign. It just is a generic larger sign for the development.
Supplemental, I'll ask the developer if they would put the sign up. Let's be transparent here and get everybody's input. And more information is a good thing.
I thank you. Yes, we can work with the municipality to put something out on the property.
Please repeat that.
Sorry, yes, we can work with the municipality to put something out on the property.
Thank you very much.
I'm finished.
Member Cox.
And to the members of the public, through the chair, if you have friends and know people who didn't get the notification, have them call the planning department and give an address. If they don't have an internet, at least make sure that they have an address that they can have it mailed to. Okay? Okay.
Anyone else? We need a mover on the motion. Moved by Member Minnings, seconded by Member Taylor. All in favor? Carried. Yes, I'd just like to thank the members of the public for attending. We're going to close the meeting off now for this particular matter. But once again, it's great to see you all here and showing your concerns, and we've listened and we'll act. So thank you. Yes, sir. Call the meeting back to order.
The sink factory's going up for sale and so we can.
We'll move to delegations. Any delegations? Seeing none, moving forward. A consent agenda. We have a motion, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Actually, as there's no items on the consent agenda, the general motion to adopt the agenda is just the agenda be adopted as circulated.
Correspondence. New business.
Believe you're at section H.1 now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Development, yeah, H.1.
That'd be me.
Member Brandi, if I can speak.
And I can do this in 25 words or less. No, no, I can't. But I can do it in less than 5.
Member Brandi, take it away.
All right. Thank you. Through the chair to council. Back on March 20th, we had 2 presentations, one by TC Energy and the other one by Save Georgian Bay. Both of them were on opposite ends of the spectrum with regard to a very significant proposal for the town of Meaford on the defense property that's there. You may recall, I pulled that from the last council meeting, and with your approval, I had asked for, we had received it for information, and I pulled it from the meeting with a request to give me some time to look into this further with the goal of reviewing website information, the strategic EA that was prepared by Save Georgian Bay, and to seek other information to help us come to some sort of conclusion on it over and above the accepting for information. I did review the strategic EA that was prepared by Save Georgian Bay. I'm going to give them credit for an NGO. I was quite surprised at the in-depth nature of that, but it's not what I consider to be an EA. And EAs in Ontario are proponent driven. So an EA would have to be done by TC Energy or at least because it's a federal jurisdiction, at least an impact assessment would need to be done. So one of the things I did in addition to that review before I'll draw my conclusions here for you is I made a call to Pollution Probe. Their logo was on the TC Energy project's proposal. And I said, I went into the general inquiry line and said, I'd like to talk to someone about how it is they have come to support the proposal based on the information that's available. I'll digress for 1 minute on this because I got a call back. I went in on the general inquiry line with Pollution Probe. I got a call back within 2.5 hours from the president of Chris Hilkin. He's the president of Pollution Probe, who was at a working conference in Paris, and I don't mean Paris, Ontario, in Paris, France, and he was surprised that the logo this was on there. And he says, it's not that we support the project, it's just we support best practices associated with coming to a conclusion because we're not inherently opposed to pumped storage. He asked for a copy of the presentation, and I think he contacted TC Energy in this regard. I think he was concerned about how this appeared. I also spoke to, I called Ducks Unlimited, who are also on this, and asked them why they were able to support the project. I spoke with Marie-Paul Godwin, manager of provincial operations for Ducks Unlimited. They were almost as good at getting back. I called their general inquiry line, and within less than a day, their general manager of Ontario operations got back to me. These two organizations should give clinics to the private sector and government sector on customer service. They were astounding. Ducks Unlimited basically said they supported the consultation with First Nations, which of course is a legal requirement in Canada, and that they also want to know more. They, they're not per se supporting the project. They're not opposed to it. They want more. So that clarified a few things for me big time, because I could find nowhere the information that I needed to make a conclusion or recommendation to this council. So just by way of background then, 4 municipal organizations, 4 of our neighbors, and of course the reason we care about this is Georgian Bay is critical to our strategic planning and tourism plan, our economic plan. The town of Parry Sound has outwardly opposed this project. The township of the Archipelago outwardly opposes it. The town of Blue Mountains outwardly opposes it. And the township of Georgian Bay outwardly opposes it. I am not recommending that we do that. That's not what I'm going to do here. I think that we need to be fair about this. And I fully came to appreciate the open-minded nature of 2 of the most significant organizations that have commented on this. So I just put this proposal here together based on the information that I could draw together. And it is this, that if you go back to the whereases here in this document, there should be, in my view, a full consideration of the costs and you need a full environmental assessment, and that means considering alternatives. This energy project actually is not a very efficient project. You have to spend a ton of money to get that water up to the top of the hill. You do that, of course, when rates are low, and then you sell when the rates are high. And that's one of the reasons why TC Energy and Bruce Energy are connected in this project, because it makes sense financially to them to do that. Is it the best thing to put on that site? I don't know. Maybe it should be windmills. Maybe it should be solar panels. I don't know the answer, because no one has addressed it properly. And in a good EA, the alternatives would be evaluated. In addition to that, so I would say that we request, because this is federal, that the federal government should not approve it until a full EA is done and the options are considered. Now, the environmental assessment, in my view, and I'm going to change the wording here because I have the Ontario Association of Impact Assessment, who I am in discussions with the president of on this, but they're going to a board. And I have not talked to the planners. I have not had time. I'm just going to say that the environmental assessment process be put in place that is considered a gold standard by environmental assessment experts and planners, as opposed to by the reason the associations have to be concerned is they're not advocacy groups. So they don't want to be seen as one way or the other on the project. They are process experts, but I don't want to compromise them at this point in time. So I'm just going to say by environmental assessment experts and planners there. Oh yeah, the change. If you look at the second paragraph in the first whereas, if you will, take out by the Association for Impact Assessment and the Ontario, and replace that with a gold standard approach as determined by environmental assessment experts and planners. Just that. Okay. So that would be broader. The third thing is the independent electricity system operator has apparently recommended against this project 3 times, saying it is not financially viable. 3 times. This is a project that costs range from $3 to $7 billion in estimates. And you all know projects like this never come in under cost. They're often double or at least 50% more. So this is billions of taxpayers' dollars that would be designated through a there's no competitive process for it, and under a long-term 50-year agreement with the province. So that's a steep price to pay if it's not financially viable. So I've added in here that in the EA, and normally these things are considered anyway in a really rock solid EA. And I say that because EA has been screwed around with so much. I know the planners can attest to that, we don't even know what an EA is anymore, I think, these days. So when I say an EA with alternatives, that's very clear. So we need to evaluate their original conclusions. And my understanding is they do a lot of analysis to determine cost benefit. So I would not want that information dismissed before a project of this nature was put forward. Also, unlike our neighbors, they claim that there will be irreparable harm. They claim that, and they may well be correct, but they may not be correct. There may be ways to mitigate some of the concerns with regard to the fish getting sucked up the pipes up into Meaford and lions in the lake and so forth. So what I'm suggesting here would be logical because of the importance of Georgian Bay is that it cannot cause irreparable harm to the environment. You can read the rest of it, the details there. And we should not be, the next whereas is the project would not be further considered if there's a risk of irreversibly altering and damaging the unique ecological nature. One of the things that I could not find any assurances of is on this highly contaminated defense site, how on earth are you going to make sure the contaminants, you're making a big pond there, and then you're going to drop that whenever there's a high energy demand. How are you going to absolutely make sure those toxic materials don't spew into Georgian Bay every time you do that? And I could see nothing of any significance to answer those questions. The reason this site is designated the way it is because it's highly toxic. So yeah, I kind of want to know that you're not spewing that stuff all over Georgian Bay at the end of the day. So these questions, I don't see good answers to any of these things at this point in time. So I'm proposing this particular deviation, if you will, from what our fellow municipalities are saying, with the idea that, hey, you know what? We'll hear you out. You do a good job of your environmental assessment analysis and cost benefit analysis, and then we'll be able to make a decision as to whether we support this or not. I do know for a fact that this project has been discussed with Minister Stevens or Minister Smith already. I don't know whether it's relative to the decision by the independent electricity system operator or what. Don't know. All I know is that there have been ongoing discussions at a high level. So I would recommend to council that this is what we say. We don't object to it, but we don't sit back and say, you know what, whatever you say is good, because that's what I'm saying is do a good job of your analysis and we'll make a decision when we see that. That's what I propose.
Thank you, Member Brennan. First to speak, Judith Cox.
Thank you, Member Brennan. I don't know how to say this nicely. I get where you're going with this, but it's on federal land and they don't have to do anything. So this is all good, but it's going to cost money and they're not going to do it. I object to it. I mean, they can bring forward, I mean, look what they've done already. They've got decals and doing things that people don't even know and aren't even for them. I mean, it's great, but I just would like somewhere in here that we object to it because I do. I think you can ask all you want, but I know shouldn't be so pessimistic, but I've not ever seen any of these people ever do anything that they just carry on and do what they want. No offense. Look at over in Edenville. There's an airport there and they're hauling truckloads. I went by there at 4 o'clock in the morning and there's a line of dump trucks hauling in some dirt from somewhere. Nobody cares because it's on federal property and nobody's going to do anything about it. It's very irritating. I mean, if nothing else, Adam Chambers should be the one that we should be digging at because this is federal. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's all well and good to do this. I mean, that's fine with me, but I totally objected to it.
It's Adam Chambers when it comes to the environmental assessment. But if Ontario is going to kick in $3, $4, $5 billion or more, it's Ontario too. So, I mean,
yeah, but they're going to kick it in if
it's not like one goes without the other. No, I see. I don't know TC Energy. I would think that as a good corporate citizen, they would come forth and do a good job if we gave them half the chance. That's where I'm coming from here.
Well, you're very nice.
You know, we see all kinds of proposals. We see today developers are proposing this. Everyone's got their bias and their interest, but I just felt like why say an outright no if all we can do is say, you know, do a good job of your environment. There's nothing to stop them from doing a full EA. Nothing. They can do that. And if they do that and it turns out, well, you can do it. If you're going to get $5-7 billion from the province, don't tell me you can't afford to do an EA. That is absurd. So.
Sorry, through the chair, there are absurds out there, but no offense. I think I do, and I think you're right here, but I just want somewhere in here to say we object to it. Because I mean, we do say that as long as there's nothing happens, and that's fine. But I have no faith in any of them anymore. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
boy. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Member Minnings.
But thank you very much.
Hi, thank you through the chair. Yeah, my comment, I have two. One is in the final recommendation for resolution, you have a list of places we should send our
Yeah.
decision resolution to. Should the First Nations not be included in that?
They could be. It's a
Okay,
good point.
that would be-
I hadn't thought of that. There would be more than one. There's the one First Nation that is hoping to be part of it from an economic point of view, but they're not the only First Nations out there.
Correct.
I would have to dig in to see who else might be involved to add them, but we could notify them one way or the other at some point. But to tell you the truth, I didn't look into the full range of I just know we're being consulted.
Just for the sake of today's motion, we can just add and applicable First Nations.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. And then my second question through the chair is that I would recommend that our response be that we don't support it. However, there could be a sentence in there that if there was more information coming, as for example, in EA, then we would be willing to look at it again. But I think based on what we have and what was presented, that it's a no.
Member Burkett.
Thank you through the chair. Well done, Member Brennan. I can't support it at all. Like, it's a flat no for me, only because federal rules, and I'm not involved. I don't know what EAs are involved. They could have exemptions because it's on federal lands. And when this amount of money that's involved, and to Member Cox's comments, Clearview Township tried to stop the fill from coming into that airport. Hard no jurisdiction over federal lands. And I would hope the stuff isn't contaminated, but it's coming out of the city of Toronto, and it's massive. You can't even see the trees anymore. So I can't support this. I hope that.
Interesting.
Member James.
Well, I found the two presentations to be quite informative, especially the second presentation from I believe it was Save Georgian Bay. I think it's great that you've brought this forward. But I think my stance would be that we support the other municipalities that have come out strongly opposed to this project, and follow the motions that have already been put forward, or support one of those motions that have already been put forward that clearly puts forward our position that we as a council do not want this project to proceed, as opposed to giving them any sort of idea that we may support the project.
Interesting. Member Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair, I support Member Jansen, Member Burkett, Member Cox, Member Minnings. Let's support our neighboring municipalities and show support to them.
Thank you. I'll pass the chair to Vice Chair Jansen. My comments.
Go ahead.
You did an awful lot of work and an awful lot of research on this, Member Brennan, and you should be commended for it. However, like everyone else on the committee, it's federal land, and we have no say what happens on federal land. So I would be opposed to your comments about giving them a second shower, a chance to. I know it wouldn't hurt to review it, but we just keep putting things over and over and over. And I'd like to support our colleagues in the other townships, and I'm going to vote no for this one.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yeah, it always interests me that, on some projects we say more information is better than on others we say no. I'm forever fascinated by our conclusions that way. But yeah, I mean, no is fine. It's not all federal land. Keep in mind that it's the bed of Georgian Bay that gets affected. That's not federal. in terms of Crown land ownership and things. So, no, I like, if you want to object to it, that's fine. I just thought it would be, well, no, I just thought fairer, really. I mean, this project's been underway since 2021. I mean, it just came to our attention recently, at least to mine. And I just thought, you know, there is a way to do things right, and that's why I put it this way. But if in fact we're going to object to it, then I would, if we're going to do that, there are statements in some of the other council. I don't know how you can conclude what they did in some cases. Like, yeah, I'm just saying, like, you can object to it, but to definitively say that it's going to do this and do that without an assessment, to me, is kind of strange. We usually don't do that kind of a thing. That's all. Yeah. So,
Madam Clerk.
Yeah. Through the chair to member, I guess what I think, I know what I'm thinking is that they seem to be talking about things and they just didn't have the answers that actually they should have had if they've been doing this for 3 or 4 years. So I found that a little slippery. And then when I heard the other side and how clear it was and what they have been doing, and I have been, I don't know, I get emails from Save George and Bray for the last 5-6 years. And I know that they're a very effective, well-respected community of people who do their homework like you do. And so when I saw that, and then as soon as you said to me, you called those people and they were like, we'd like more information, it bothered me to think that they were actually putting those on their report as if, which we all would go, oh, well, they all must promote it. They all must think it's good. And as soon as you said that, my back went sort of, well, wait a minute here. So I guess I just didn't have a good feel for it, even though there was some information. I don't think their information, I don't know how to say it. It just wasn't right. It just didn't seem right to me.
But keep in mind that what TC put on there, the quotes that put on there, no one denied those quotes. It's just out of context. They don't paint the picture. That's what I got from my 2 conversations.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you. I'm gonna, it's member Brennan's motion and report that he brought forward. So I guess in part, is member Brennan okay with not proceeding with his proposed motion and proposing a different motion?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. And you want me to prepare that then for an upcoming meeting? Is that how we would do it? Or?
No, I have a draft motion if council wants me to. I've made it pretty. Shrunk it down.
Yes, read the motion, please, Madam.
So a draft motion reads that the council of the Township of Severn opposes proceeding with the TC Energy Pump Storage Project on George Bay. Further, that this resolution be forwarded to all municipalities in the Georgian Bay Basin, the IESO, DND, the Honorable Andre Kajin, Minister of the Environment, Conservation Parks, the Honorable Graydon Smith, Minister of Natural Resources, Forestry, the Honorable Jill Dunlop, MPP for Simcoe North, Scott Aitchison, MP, Perry Muskoka, the Honorable Adam Chambers, MP, Simcoe North, Diane Libouthier, Minister of Fisheries, Oceans, and the Canadian Coast Guard and applicable First Nations. And further, that motions PDC 2024-23 and PDC 2024-24 regarding the TC Energy Project delegations from the March 20th Planning and Development Committee minutes be received for information. So it opposes the project, circulates to everybody, and just receives the original delegations, which was the motions that were deferred, still as just received for information.
Member Jansen, you want to speak?
Thank you, through the chair. Madam Clerk, should we also be declaring that we're supporting the resolution of the Township of the Yes, thank you.
Council can include that. However, I don't have a copy of that motion. Hasn't been included on any of our public agendas. So I don't have that as reference points, nor would anybody else for reference to see what council's supporting.
And there's 4 of them.
So
I've got them here. Yeah. I guess then a procedural question, if I could, would it be beneficial for us to postpone this decision so that those resolutions could come back to this body for discussion on whether or not we support one of those resolutions as our message that would go out into the broader community?
Member Cox.
Through the chair, could we not say that we support our member municipalities in the objections to this project? Yeah. Something like that, because I would assume Meaford may have something out there. I would assume maybe, hopefully Wasaga Beach does in Collingwood. So could we say our further like the members?
In respect to, has everyone come out for or against the project? I don't know. And honestly, staff have not tracked it either. I don't know if there actually is one central source that's tracking each motion one way or the other on this matter. So we can definitely include a general line that just says council supports the member municipalities on Georgian Bay in opposition to this project.
Point of order?
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand how this works. So we vote on the new motion, like as an amendment to my motion. Is that how this works? I'm procedurally trying to understand it.
I'll take it. That was, yes, the other motion was never tabled. That's why the clerk asked you if you were okay with a different motion. So
I see.
So
Okay,
if you
that's
wished your motion to be on the floor, then council would vote on it. Sounds like it would maybe be a no. So that's why we ask if you're
right.
Okay. And if you're okay, then the clerk is furiously working on a new motion that you might support.
Well, while I fully understand council's position, I will vote no because I still think my position was the better one. But democracy at work. No, I don't need a recorded vote.
Madam Clerk, are you prepared?
I believe so. So the updated motion reads that the Council of the Township of Severn opposes proceeding with the TC Energy Pump Storage Project on Georgian Bay, and further that council supports the area member municipalities on Georgian Bay in opposition to the TC Energy Pump Storage Project. Further that this resolution be forwarded to all municipalities in Georgian Bay, and then I'm just going to say the list of MPs and such that were already mentioned. And further that motions PDC 2024-23 and PDC 2024-24 regarding TC Energy Project delegations from the March 20th, 2024 Planning and Development Committee minutes be received for information.
Sorry, just a quick question. SSEA, is that outside of their scope of interest? Only because SSEA is, we support them. Should they be copied on it too?
I can add them to the list.
Do we have a mover? Member Jansen. Second member Minnings. All in favor? Scary. Madam Clerk, are we have anything in closed? Then we don't have to kick Catherine out. She can stay. We now therefore need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Member Jansen. We got to do the motion. Sorry.
Yeah, the motion reads that this meeting being is hereby now adjourned at 11:39 a.m.
Member Jansen moved, seconded Member Burkett. All in favor?